Our true history told by Extraterrestrials and Cassiopeia Project. Creation of human race, main prehistoric events, and some key principles of the universe order based on the information which was transferred to the contactee Irina Podzarova by the representatives of the interstellar union civilizations of our galaxy during physical and astral contacts which have been taking place on a regular basis since 1999. The topics that will be covered in the article: who, when, and for what reason created us? What is the true story of the first men's fall? Who is Lucifer and what was his role in the human history? Explanation of the global catastrophe 12,000 years ago known as the Great Flood. The Moon origin, how it became the Earth satellite. How all the religions appeared, who is God in the extraterrestrial understanding. True meaning of Jesus Christ's mission. The purpose of the extraterrestrial humanoids, why they contact us and provide with the information. Introduction from the author. Recently my friends and acquaintances have been asking me with amazement, why do you spend so much time for these extraterrestrials? Do you really believe in this? My dear friends and sympathizers, you are right. I would not have made so much effort for writing down the information stated in this article if I was not sure that this is the truth. And here is why. For several decades, I have been studying the questions connected with ufology, abnormal phenomena, and contacts with extraterrestrial intelligence. There are many announcements from contactees about contacts with anybody on the internet. However, none of these contacts provides a holistic universe view, which unites spiritual knowledge, religious knowledge from different spiritual egregores, and the structure of physical extraterrestrial civilizations guarding us from the cosmos. Most commonly, all the sources give some abstract, highly spiritual information, though provided in an impressive manner, but disconnected from our reality, or vice versa, present the contacts with extraterrestrials that resemble a classic fantasy. For the first time in my life, I face a systemic multi-year contact that provides a completely holistic worldview in all its aspects: historical, cosmogonical, physical, spiritual, and others. Besides, what is meant here is not only astral but also multiple physical contacts. Since she was 13 years old, Irina Podzarova has been traveling with her mentors on the spaceships of the Interstellar Union, visiting the planets of the solar system and the planets of our mentors. All of them are described in detail in her private diary, which she is keeping from the very first contact, in summer 1999, and the scanned pages of which are available for me. Among many other things, there are the following issues described in this diary by the teenage handwriting: the physical characteristics of the visited planets in numbers, extraterrestrial alphabet, and dictionary, extraterrestrial ships construction, and so on. In addition to this, my multiple personal contacts with Irina on the internet and my personal contacts with extraterrestrial beings via Irina, including my personal medical diagnostics and the recommendations given to me, proved to me that we deal with the intelligence of the highest level. And it loves us sincerely and treats us with maximal patience, understanding, and care, filled with hope for our soundness and sincerity in response. That's why I try to provide you with this knowledge with maximum effort and using all my modest abilities. This is the very same contact, which many people looked forward to. However, we have been having it since the moment of our creation, as a hybrid of three ancient extraterrestrial races and the Earth primates. I wish that all of us could understand that this is the time to grow up and prove, first of all to ourselves, that we are ready to become a full member of the galactic community, waiting for us and believing in us during our complicated history. With respect and love to everybody. Vladimir Goldstein. So, let's start. Who created us, when and for what reason? About 5 million years ago our planet was discovered by the two Masout spacemen, the ancient humanoid civilization from the Orion constellation. All the extraterrestrial names are pronounced according to the alien language. They resemble the human race by appearance, but their height is 5 to 8 meters. The distance from the planet Masout to the Sun is 1,360 light-years, but the spaceships of the advanced extraterrestrial civilizations cover such distance almost instantly by using the so-called gravity engines based on quantum particle, graviton, the speed of which is much more than the speed of photon, the quantum of light. And it's not against the known to us physical laws, because instead of the movement with the hyperrelativistic velocity another process takes place, but its detailed description deviates from this article topic. The discoverers of our planet came to Earth by the spaceships similar to a giant pyramid. Million years later they came again by the ships of the same shape. And this is the reason why several pyramids on our planet were built. Earthmen hoped that if they duplicate the form of extraterrestrial spaceships, they will also be able to fly to the stars. The building of the best-known pyramids was made under the guidance and with the participation of the Tumisuts first of all for the energy exchange between Earth and the space. The Tumisuts are represented as fantastic giants in our legends, myths, and sacred books because of their unusual for the Earthman height. They also were prototypes for the giant statues of Easter Island and other famous giant sculptures. After investigation of the planet, the Tumisout scientists discovered that there was no intelligent life on Earth, as it was called later, but there was a unique variety of animals and plants which made our planet peculiar among other planets in the galaxy with the organic form of the matter existence. At that time Earth's orbit was closer to the Sun than now, and there was no winter on the planet at all. There was one supercontinent and very favorable conditions for organic life development. The Moon was an independent planet of the Solar System, i.e. it was not an Earth satellite and did not influence Earth directly. The Tumisout biologists decided to create a hybrid intelligent being by merging their genetic material with the Earth animals' genetic material suitable for this purpose. After a thorough investigation of the animals on our planet, genetic scientists of our ancestors chose for the experiments the representatives of primates similar to the current chimpanzee. At first extraterrestrial visitors wanted to wait for the results of the natural evolution and their transformation into the intelligent race, but it didn't happen for quite a long time. Simultaneously, the discovery of the planet was reported to the Association of Different Civilizations in our galaxy, which is named, in our translation, the Interstellar Union, IU. For the moment it consists of 117, from the total 727, intelligent civilizations of our galaxy called the Milky Way. Shortly after, the representatives of two more ancient civilizations arrived to the planet, the humanoid civilization from the planet Burkad, the Cygnus constellation, 670 light-years from the Sun, and the reptilian one from the planet Selbit, the Canes Venatici constellation, 730 light-years from the Sun. And the planet Burkad was in those times and still is an official capital of the IU. Nevertheless, during the following 1 million years, the experiments for the development of a new intelligent creature were made only with the genetic material of the Tumisuts and the Earth primates. It should be also noted that the lifetime in the advanced extraterrestrial worlds is much longer than ours, e.g. the Burkhader's live 10,000, 15,000 years, and it's far from the limit. But despite all the efforts and a long period of these genetic experiments, they couldn't create an intelligent being. the primate's DNA didn't merge with the Tumisut's DNA. That's why approximately 4 million years ago the scientists of Burkat and Selbit joined the experiment. And the DNA of Burkat humanoids and the Selbit reptilians were added in a specific proportion to the DNA of the future hybrid creature. And only after a large proportion of Burkat genes was added approximately 3 million years ago, they managed to create a planned genetic hybrid. His DNA consisted of a gene combination of 4 creatures, 3 of extraterrestrial races and 1 of the Earth primates. Afterward, this hybrid evolved into a human being. And the major achievement of the extraterrestrial scientists was that they managed to create a being with physiology and energy suitable for the incarnation of a sentient spirit from the spirit world, which is actually a criterion to call any being intelligent. And sentient spirits started incarnating into the bodies of the created hybrids, just in the same style. It exists now, during the process of conception and pregnancy. And now about the gene proportion of our ancestors which was added to the DNA of the first created Earthman. The Earth primates genes, 45%. The Burkaters genes, 35%. The Tumisuts genes, 15%. The Selbitian reptilians genes, 5%. That's the way it is. So now, my dear readers, we know who we are from the genetic point of view. In total, there are 55% of extraterrestrial genes and 45% of the modern ape ancestors' genes in us. It means that traditional scientists are partially right when they insist on our evolution from apes, as well as esoteric representatives when they believe in our extraterrestrial origin. As it often happens, the truth lies somewhere in between. Except for the fact that there is a little bit more of extraterrestrial blood in us. However, 5% of it belongs to the reptilian genes, which in particular provided our race with some rigidity, sometimes even severity, will, courage, determination, and other traits that are sometimes called fighting. So our genetic age is also known now. It is 3 million years. In those times we resembled modern people of European ethnic group but with a height of about 4 meters, because the genes of the tall Tumisuts dominated the genes of other participants of the crossbreeding. The lifetime of the first people was approximately the same as described in the Old Testament, which originates from Torah given to Moses. This will be described further. Let's go on and answer the last question of this chapter, for what they did it. The aim of extraterrestrials was to create a race of conscious assistants, intelligent humanistic beings who took only the best from several civilizations and ready to develop further till the level when it will be possible for them to join the IU as not just an assistant but as an equal participant in the matter of the universe investigation. Our joining to the IU is their aim at the moment as well. They contact us exactly for this. I will tell about it in detail further in the article. What is the true story of the first men's fall? Who is Lucifer and what was his role in the human history? First of all, I would like to say that technically the first people were received as the result of the process which is now called in vitro fertilization. The new being embryo created in vitro, the DNA of which consisted of genes in proportion stated above, was put into a primate female which then gave birth to a baby in an ordinary way. In fact, she was a surrogate mother. As it was already said, the nervous and energy systems of the embryo attracted for incarnation a sentient spirit from the spirit world. It happened during pregnancy as well as now. The extraterrestrials created 9 pairs of original people, first men and women. That is in total 18 individuals, not 2. However, at first the males, or male, were born, and then the genetic material was selected and the whole process was repeated, but with the changes of chromosomal complement for the aim of getting females. This is the explanation of the biblical Adam's rib and the first female creation. The names Adam and Eve, and also Lilith, who was the very first woman before Eve as the legends say, are probably the symbol of the whole team of the first people and the adapted for us names of the first beings who were born first in this team. Please note that starting from the word names in the last sentence is my personal assumption, as there was no such information from Irina until now. With high probability, it can also be assumed that Lilith, whom God destroyed, and then created Eve, according to legends by some reasons was incapable of life or didn't attract for incarnation a sentient spirit from a sufficiently high level, according to our creators, of the spirit world. And what about the apple? The creation of a new race took place on a huge extraterrestrial base located in the place where in our days the waters of the Mediterranean Sea are splashing, and in those days was a central part of the supercontinent. The base was isolated from the outer world. The extraterrestrials, representatives of 3 races of our creators, also lived there. They came there on spaceships. There were many plants brought by them, including those needed for their personal purposes. They bred animals and the so-called scientific complexes providing the performance of these investigations and experiments. As you have probably guessed, it was the same paradise. Its size, together with the spaceport and the enormous encircling semi-natural forest, was 480 square kilometers. It's stated in the 15 to 17 verses of the second chapter of the Genesis, that name of this chapter in Torah, Bereshit, which means at the beginning, in the following way. And the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to do work in it and take care of it. And the Lord God gave the man orders, saying, You may freely take of the fruit of every tree of the garden. But of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you may not take, for on the day when you take of it, death will certainly come to you. It says here that the two Masout representatives, Yahweh from Hebrew was translated into Russian as the Lord. Some of those who came from the skies, Elohim in the original text means not singular but a plural number, but in the Russian translation it was transformed into the word God, settled the created people. In Hebrew, Adam can mean either one separate man or all the representatives of our species. In the Garden of Eden, this is the name of a big scientific base where a human being was created. I would like also to remind the climate in those days allowed the plants to bloom and bear fruit all year round. Now we are getting to the main in this chapter. The notorious tree of knowledge of good and evil is a tumisout plant called in their language korol. It was necessary for the activation of mental and intuitive functions of the inhabitants of that planet. Their scientists created it via genetic engineering especially for this purpose, and the Tumisuts always took its seeds with them on spaceships to have access to fresh fruits. Because of a peculiar metabolism in the earthman bodies, the fruits of korol were deadly poisoning for them, and for us as well. That's why the extraterrestrials who were responsible for taking care and raising the hybrids told them several times that eating those fruits was dangerous for them. No one could suppose that the young Earthmen, worshipping their creators since childhood, could disobey them. And who wouldn't worship them when they had giant height? If speaking about the Tumisuts extraterrestrials, flew on flying saucers and other vehicles, and showed other technical miracles which could shock us even nowadays. And what could make our ancestors break a strict prohibition of the highly honored God's creators? This is what. Among all those gods, the celibate extraterrestrials were there on equal terms though they were of non-humanoid species. As talented geneticists and xenobiologists, they took an active part in the hybrid's creation, not speaking about the fact that their genome was inserted into human DNA. And this is the celibate representative who persuaded the first people to taste the forbidden fruit. The Bible in the 1 to 6 verses of the 3rd chapter of the Genesis says about this. Now the snake was wiser than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Has God truly said that you may not take of the fruit of any tree in the garden? And the woman said, We may take of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But of the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, God has said, If you take of it or put your hands on it, death will come to you. And the snake said, Death will not certainly come to you. For God sees that on the day when you take of its fruit, your eyes will be open, and you will be as gods, having knowledge of good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and a delight to the eyes, and to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit, and gave it to her husband. The snake here is the celibate representative because he belonged to a reptilian race and was similar to earth reptiles by biological characteristics. By the words wiser than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made, it was explained to Moses how the snake could talk. And the peculiarities of the meaning of the phrase any beast of the field which the Lord God had made, in Hebrew Asa Hachseda, means that it was about not the creation of all the earth fauna but about the preparing of animals for a specific purpose in a particular earth area, country, or region. Pay attention to the words, you will be as gods, having knowledge of good and evil. That means when you eat a tumisout plant intended for strengthening special qualities of gods, actually, energy, metabolism, and more important, intuition, foresight, and so on, you will become as they are. And now let's discuss why the celibate extraterrestrial, in fact one of our creators, did it this way. Why he made an attempted murder of the people created with such difficulty. The point is that from the beginning the celibate reptilians complained that there was a small number of their genes in the genotype of the hybrid. They have been working over this task for a long time together with the scientists of Burkett and Tumisout and hoped that the distribution of genes would be proportional. But Burkett and Tumisout representatives, as more ancient and powerful civilizations, made a common decision to minimize the reptilian genes as they considered some reptilian traits dangerous for the hybrid. Then celibate asked for permission to have their own experiments for the creation of an intelligent being, based on Earth reptiles, the species of which were numerous in those times. But they were refused. Our humanoid creators were sure that two so young and different civilizations wouldn't get along on one planet in peace and would fight each other. As a result of this, the celibate group of scientists, without informing the government of their planet, made an unapproved decision to stage an accident. That is in secrecy to persuade the first men to taste a poisoned fruit and then show the consequences of this as disobedience to the creators. Probably they thought that such death of our ancestors would let the reptilians offer a convincing argument. Hybrids disobeyed their creators and behaved with indiscretion because the gene proportion was wrong. That's why in future experiments, which would be needed to be restarted, the reptilians' gene percent will have to be significantly increased. But there is more to come. As we already said, the basis of every intelligent being is a spirit, which incarnates in the body when it comes from the spirit world. And in the body of one of the celibate scientists who took an active part in the seduction of the first people, was incarnated the soul of the spiritual being which we know as Lucifer. And this is what meant when the sacred books say the devil put on a snake shape. Lucifer, which means light bringer, really was one of the first supreme beings created by the almighty intelligent being whom we call God. However, using the law of free will, which applies to everybody, he decided to separate from the divine source. We will not analyze the reasons and consequences of such a choice. This is the topic of a separate article. What is important for us is that this separation was started in one of his past lives on the planet Selbit when he was in the reptilian body, when the temptations of the material world, power and others, became for this spiritual being more convincing than the original light. So let us repeat one more time, in the Garden of Eden, on the Earth base of extraterrestrials, a murder attempt of the created people was made by one of their creators. As you know, the people were convinced to taste the poisoned fruit, or fruits. According to the information we received, not all 18 of the first people did it, but only a few of them, and probably they are those whom we know as Adam and Eve. Probably they were the ones created firstly. In addition to this situation as an event in the material world, it also supposes deep spiritual meaning. It turned out that Adam and Eve really had knowledge of good and evil. Firstly, they most likely never dealt with deception or negativity before, i.e., they dealt only with good. And now, when they decided to become as gods, after having taken the fruit meant for gods, they fell into a trap, cunningly set by Lucifer, who came down from divinity in the body of the celibate reptilian. Secondly, and this is the most important, by their decision they did the same choice as Lucifer himself, who seduced them for it. They chose to follow not the path of light, the God's will, if you like, but the selfish wish to become as God himself and also having separated from him. In Christianity, it is usually called arrogance. It seems that this was a spiritual intention of the incarnated Lucifer, who found such important allies. And then rescue mission took place, as we would call it nowadays. In the Old Testament, it is said that Adam, after having sinned, hid from God and did not respond to his call. In fact, after having tasted the poisoned fruit, those who took it were in the condition, which we call a near-death coma. The poisoning led to death in several hours, not to an instant death. Tumisout and Burkad scientists found our ancestors, who got poisoned, in time and managed to cure, or reanimate, them. When they recovered, they told all the details of what had happened. The truth was revealed. The forces were unequal, so the Selbit malefactors were isolated, and their planet was informed about their act. The Selbit authorities took the would-be murderers, and after that they were savagely punished. As we learned, they had been separated from their families forever and sent to a special planet of criminals, located on the outskirts of galaxy in the constellation of Aries. There they spent the rest of their lives in hard work, deprivations, and without hope for release. As you remember, one of these Selbit criminals was the incarnated Lucifer. One can only imagine how it influenced him, especially taking into consideration that such concepts as regret or guilt could hardly be part of him. There is one more thing. It would be logical to assume that in all this story in the bodies of one or several our main, humanoid, creators, the souls from high spiritual levels were incarnated, taking into account that among the Selbit representatives the Lucifer himself was. And this turned out to be true, but we will tell about it in the next to last chapter of this article. So what happened next to people? Actually, everything what happened next was also described in the Bible, though again in the conceptions acceptable for Moses and his contemporaries. The Burkad and Tumisout scientists decided to evict the people outside the base into the earthly realm. It was decided that if they broke a prohibition and disobeyed once, they could do anything including attack of their creators with the technologies located in the paradise. This eviction was a biblical expulsion from paradise. Though the representatives of Burkad and Tumisout remained gods for our remote ancestors but already did not inspire love, confidence, and understanding. The people were provided with the opportunity to live and develop in their own way. However, our creators didn't leave them without care entirely. They give them the information about a proper social order, moral values, God, the spirit world and many other things. It all became a content of different chapters of the Old Testament, including messages from the prophets who were channelers, conscious and unconscious. But the Bible prophets lived in the era of the loss of knowledge which had come after the cataclysms on the planet, which we will talk about in the next chapter. Explanation of the global catastrophe 12,000 years ago, known as the Great Flood. During the following approximately 2 million years, the human civilization on Earth was developing with the support of our creators who acted in the open. Exactly in this historic, to be more precise, prehistoric period, the legendary Earth super-civilizations appeared and achieved their perfection. First of all I mean Lemuria and Atlantis, which was a later stage of Lemuria development. It was the age of humankind's progress, which brought significant achievements in all spheres, Cyclopean constructions on the planet, some of them we know as the wonders of the world, and also understanding of spiritual truth. In ancient Indian literature, this age was called the Satya Yuga, the Age of Light. The Vedas texts that survived tell us about the flying ships Vimanas. There are also their schemes, about medicine which we are far to achieve, about atom structure, the universe organizing, and many other things completely forgotten or discovered again. About 200,000 years ago, with the help of extraterrestrial technologies, the colonies of the Earthmen appeared on Mars and Venus, which at that time had other orbits relative to the Sun and atmospheres similar to the Earth one, and thus were suitable for the protein organisms. A more detailed description of this long and eventful age is a wealth of information, which demands the format different from this article. So let us go straight to the event stated in the heading of this part. If you study the Internet, you will find the information that according to quite scientific data there is a supposition about some extraordinary catastrophe on the planet that took place about 12,000 years ago. This also proved by the mass graves of different types of animals dating exactly by the stated period. What happened then at that period according to the information from the extraterrestrials? At that time, an extremist group, as we would call it now, came to power on the planet Selbit that you already know. Its representatives pursued policy, which denied the interstellar union values, though their civilization was still part of it, in an aggressive manner. Evidently, the old story with the people created against the genetic will of the Selbit scientists still disturbed them. In the end, Selbit started a war, which at first took place in the other part of galaxy far from the solar system. In our place, it was still peaceful for a long time. Human and extraterrestrial beings cooperated, communicated, and executed, so to speak, joint projects. The extraterrestrials' main base in the solar system was on the planet that now we know as Phaeton. It was located between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter at a distance about 2,8 astronomical units from the Sun. The other, more correct and original name of this planet, Nibiru. We know it as Phaeton because the name was taken from Greek mythology, where there was a mythical character, who disobeyed gods, was called like this. There were also bases on other planets as well, including the Moon that was in orbit far from the Sun than Earth. The center of the Earth civilization and simultaneously the central base of the IU on Earth was, let's call it Megalopolis, located on a huge mountain in the place where nowadays the notorious Bermuda Triangle is. In those days, it was dry land. 12,000 years ago, the population of Earth and its colonies was about 55 million people. There was still a paradise climate, summer temperature all year round, almost no snow or ice on our planet. Such life did not demand any serious military structures capable to repel external aggression. Probably the celibate extraterrestrials, that became aggressive, counted on this when their warships invaded the solar system unexpectedly. Traveling with the gravity engines that existed already in those times enabled them to come almost instantly to the coordinated space point, and an outside observer would not see the physical relocation of a spaceship. The celibate war spaceships firstly attacked, of course, Phaeton, in order to destroy the main center of a probable resistance. So geophysical and simultaneously space weapon was massively used. Fortunately, we have nothing like this nowadays. It seems that nuclear weapon is no match to this. According to the information from extraterrestrials, such weapon is based on gravitation, and can cause rapid irreversible processes on a small planet with such power that can lead to the planet collapse. This what happened to Phaeton. Nowadays there is a famous asteroid belt in the area of this destroyed planet. Some Earth astronomers also think that the planet over there existed. These are the remains of the planet. Those who were on Phaeton died. Immediately after this attack, the representatives of the IU who were on spaceships and other bases realized that Phaeton had been attacked and understood what was happening. It was clear that the next targets for celibate would be Earth, as the cradle of humankind, and also Mars, Venus, and the Moon. You should take into consideration that it happened during not so long period. It was minutes or even seconds of the Earth time. Of course, emergency call about military assistance was sent from the solar system to the IU. For communication, extraterrestrials use not slow-speed radio waves but other means, the so-called gluon communication, which deliver information almost instantly. However, the delivering of the space warships, able to stop the attack, required some time. That's why unarmed spaceships of Burkad and Tumasout that were closer to us tried to disturb Selbit's plans or at least gain some time before the IU warship's arrival, in fact sacrificing themselves. I would like to add that I know that many people, reading this chapter, drew an analogy with the Star Wars and ready to consider everything as fiction. I ask you firstly to understand that it's impossible to compound something out of nothing, including Star Wars, and any other fantasy, fairy tales, myths, and legends. Secondly, please consider the information here as a whole, without taking out pieces of context. Let us continue. While fighting in the outer space, our creators also did their best to save the people from Earth, on our planet, on Mars, and Venus as well. Almost all Venus inhabitants were evacuated to the moon bases and extraterrestrial spaceships before the Selbit weapon was used. Sadly, almost everybody on Mars was killed. Because of the fact that they could destroy only a small planet with the way described above, they used other types of weapon for Mars, Venus, and Earth. Thus on Mars the atmosphere was collapsed, the cities and bases were in fact swept away together with the atmospheric shell. However, it is possible to discover its traces in the area of one of the Mars polar cap. Nevertheless, the original plan of Selbit to destroy all the people on all planets was defeated by the two reasons as I see it. The Selbit extraterrestrials did not expect that unarmed spaceships would stand against them taking a hit, and also they underestimated the resources of Burkad and Tumasout. Approximately in an hour after Phaeton was attacked, the first war spaceships came to the solar system, thus giving an opportunity to save some part of people, though this spaceship itself was soon destroyed by overwhelming force of Selbit. However, Selbit managed to make a massive blow on Earth as well. It was geophysical weapon, i.e. bombs launched from the space. They looked like huge white balls falling on the Earth ground, connecting with the Earth core and causing a wide range of global cataclysm, from terrific floods till volcano eruptions. This weapon was so powerful that the supercontinent was split. Tectonic plates shifted, Africa, South America, other parts of land, and a lot of islands were formed. Other types of extraterrestrial weapon were also used. They created on the surface effect of fire, rain and other phenomena able to destroy all life. One of the first terrific attacks was delivered intentionally on the mentioned above capital of the Earth civilization in the area of the current Bermuda Triangle. It resulted not only in a deep trench forming which then was filled with sea water, but also an interdimensional portal to plasmoid worlds, which actually is a reason of many abnormal phenomena here. This portal also appeared because a huge number of extraterrestrials from different civilizations died there simultaneously. I hope that between the unemotional lines of the article you recognize the scope and tragedy of the planet catastrophe. But it was even worse. The Selbit extraterrestrials by their spaceship's gravitational field shifted the Earth orbit and it started to move away from the Sun. The climate started a sudden change, winter appeared, it started snowing. And the main thing is that the Earth orbit came closer to the Moon orbit, a separate planet, as I have already said before. It was what they counted for, to collide Earth and the Moon, destroying both planets completely. At some time the Moon was at a distance in 4 times less than now from Earth. Of course, huge tidal waves arose. Before that there were no rises and falls of tides, and other processes in atmosphere took place. So the same great flood and a whole series of floods took place. Berkhaders and Tumisuts tried to save as many people from Earth as possible, taking them out to other planets and bases. They did the same with flora and fauna. Earthmen also helped to save people and the planet genetic pool by organizing emergency evacuation of population and animals to the extraterrestrial spaceships. It was reflected in the story of Noah and his ark. Noah was probably one of such Earthmen, and at the same time it is a composite character of such rescuers. The spaceships of Berkhad and Tumisout by working together managed to create a gravitational field which stopped Earth moving closer to the Moon. They managed to place Earth on a new, current, orbit, and Earth took the Moon by its gravitation, making it a satellite. Then some other adjustments were made, and the planet's state became as it is now. And exactly the fact that Earth and the Moon came close to each other and then some artificial orbit adjustments were made describes why we can see only one side of the Moon. According to the information we received, after the weapon was used, armed Selbit soldiers landed on the surface of Earth in order to clean up. It was not massive operations, but there were also fights between Selbit and our other creators on the surface. We do not know the details for the moment. So in the solar system and on Earth in particular, a global war took place which changed the face of some part of the solar system, let alone Earth. It was the War of Gods, which reached us in different legends and fairy tales. Finally, the IU forces managed to stop aggressive attack of Selbit, though at the cost of heavy losses. The civilization of this planet was isolated and excluded from the IU for 250 Earth years, as it was revealed later. From the first attack of Fayette until a complete cessation of military actions, 130 years have passed. However, the most active phase of the war with the planet's attack from the space lasted only several Earth days. Only 10,000 people out of 55 million were saved. People died because of the terrific weapon, cataclysms caused by it, and also by the consequences of a sudden climate change for which they were not prepared. Together with the Earth people, about 20,000 of friendly to us extraterrestrials died on our planet and in the solar system totally. Selbit losses were about 5,000 beings, because they were on well-protected warships and did not face a sudden attack. Ancient civilizations and their achievements were wiped off the face of Earth. Among these was the legendary Atlantis. The approximate dating of its destruction coincides with the date stated in the famous Plato's dialogues. After decades, when cataclysmic processes calmed down, the surviving people were brought back to Earth. Some ancestors of us were taken to the planet Diseru, location of which is known. There is a highly developed civilization now, which joined the IU. The inhabitants of Diseru are the same in appearance as we are. After hundreds of years, the situation on Selbit changed. Extremists lost power and the reptilian civilization was allowed to join the IU again. The Selbit extraterrestrials agreed that it was a mistake to lead a war against other civilizations. Currently the Selbit reptilians are active members of many researches undertaken by the IU. They treat Earthmen politely and friendly at official level, and that was proved in astral contact of Irina Podzarova with a reptilian scientist from Selbit. Among ordinary Selbit reptilians, treatment can be different, as we understood. But anyway, they haven't showed any aggression to Earth for a long time. They also do not have their own bases on Earth, unlike other civilizations. In the IU, the military actions of Selbit in our part of galaxy were called the War of Selbit, with Burkad colonies in the solar system. As for Earth, It should be added that after several hundreds of years passed after the war, a group of people made an attempt to reach their creators on the moon. They wanted to build a spaceship with the use of nuclear fuel. The secrets of its production were known since before the war and were passed down from generation to generation. That built spaceship was imperfect and dangerous for people and Earth ecology. That's why our star brothers decided to get involved and explain that time for flight's not yet come and there are many things to discover on Earth. This was described in the story of the Tower of Babel that was told to Moses. Extraterrestrials said that people at first should populate Earth, learn how to build cities, make perfect ships themselves, and the most important, live in peace and harmony. And only then they will have the right to investigate the universe together with their creators. People agreed with this and asked those whom they considered gods to help them in the development of the changed planet and organizing life there. Leading psychologists and physiologists of the IU decided to create several races out of the only one existed before. The purpose was, on the one hand, to adjust them to climate changes in different parts of the world. On the other hand, to initiate the struggle against xenophobia as the main barrier for joining of the IU of many young races. Thus, after several artificial genetic mutations, 4 main races were created out of the only one existed before. These races originated different nationalities. After the described events on Earth, a new epoch started. Its story survived with some distortions. That was another era of almost a different planet, the planet that we know nowadays. We as people stopped trusting extraterrestrials, on a subconscious level remembering horror of the events. Fear became one of our main feelings and almost obscured love. Not different types of fear are meant, but mostly fear as a general term and motivation of actions. It was one of the reasons why open contacts with extraterrestrials stopped. Instead, contacts with individual contactees and channelers, who matched by vibrations, mostly vibrations without fear, started. How all the religions appeared. Who is God in the extraterrestrial understanding? True meaning of the Jesus Christ's mission. You probably understood that our religions came to us from our creators, extraterrestrial civilizations of the IU. Its representatives were gods for us who created us with their own genes, in their image, like them, and then supervised us during many millions of years. Judaism, i.e. Torah, that was the basis of the Bible Old Testament, Christianity, the New Covenant or the New Testament, Islam, the Quran, and Buddhism, though it is more philosophy that religion, were given to humankind representatives in different times. And according to specific character of that times, traditions and beliefs of this people, and the situation on the planet in general. That's why all spiritual schools, though different from each other, actually speak about the same but in different words. Besides every following school, for example the chain Judaism, Christianity, Islam, is some kind of update of the previous one. Update that does not reject but transform the previous truth in accordance with a new stage of social development and new socio-cultural environment. The feud among their adherents is caused not by differences in the basic principles, but by intentional or non-intentional distortions, that is by fragments that were taken out of linguistic or historical context. As a rule, it was done to serve certain purposes, not quite spiritual, of the representatives of religious schools. So who is God in the extraterrestrial understanding? They think that God is our common creator, the maker who created all souls out of himself and then worlds, including the spirit world, and later a material one. I will try to describe it shortly and simple for understanding. All spirits were created simultaneously and for eternity. It happened at some moment, but there was no time as concept. That is why we can say that all of us always exist in time, that appeared later, as well as God. It means that despite this concrete but undated moment, each of us always was, is, and will be. This is exactly the present, always in both ways. A spirit cannot be destroyed or dispersed. Otherwise, it could be possible to do the same with the God, because every sentient spirit is his full manifestation connected to him into a single whole. The Creator, the Absolute, the God, the Supreme Intelligence and so on, develops, if this word can be used here, cyclically. In Hinduism, such cycles are called the day of Brahma and the night of Brahma, giving a tip for the manifested and unmanifested of all things. At the end of the manifested state, it is called Kalpa in Indian Vedas. All that exists in all the worlds come back to unmanifested state. There is no thing but this nothing exists potentially and can be manifested again. At the end of the unmanifested part of the cycle, it is called pralaya. There is the impulse that causes the manifestation of all things. If to say metaphorically and simple, it can be considered the first thought of the awakened Supreme, the Absolute, the God, the Logos, etc. Our eternal sentient spirits do not disappear when everything is dissolving. they remain in the state merged with the Absolute in order to manifest themselves again and take place on the level, which they reached in the last unmanifested cycle. It all is described in details in the works of Helena Blavatsky and the Vedas. According to the information from the IU, a manifested cycle of the creation, Mahakalpa, lasts about 125 billion years. Let me remind that according to science data, Earth is about 6 billion years. But there are also smaller cycles that are parts of the main cycle, after which only partial dissolution of the universe takes place. The duration of the main unmanifested cycle, Mahapralaya, cannot be estimated because the assessment scale also disappears. There is no concept of time anymore. That is, it can last a second or billion of years. These cycles interchange forever. They have no beginning and no end, though our small mind, exactly mind and not spirit, cannot understand it. Logic does not work here. Now, when we considered the cycles of creation as simple as possible, let us come back to our topic. However, I need to warn you that there will be information in this article that can conflict dogmatic stereotypes of believers. So a specific status of the Spirit, which we know as Jesus Christ, is explained by the fact that it was born by God, the Absolute, the Almighty God, the Creator, the Father, Logos, and so on, the first, i.e. earlier other souls. It was the very first mental impulse of the Creator. It may happen that it refers of the current cycle of the manifested universe, but also about some temporal beginning beyond all the cycles. That is what can be said here in words, i.e. from the logic level. And then all other souls, including our own, were created simultaneously. However, this very first soul was unique, as it was the first creative impulse of the Almighty, and that's why it has a special status of the nearness to God. It can be said that the soul has a more affinity to Creator than other souls. It's important to understand that other religious schools that are not connected with Jesus are not worse than Christianity. Each of them has its own founder with spiritual goals, who came from a supreme divine spiritual level. But the soul of Jesus was created the first one. However, one more great soul from the highest level, higher from that level only the divine infinity was the notorious son of the God, Lucifer, who in ancient times made the choice to separate from the Creator. Now, pay attention to the following information. On the base-paradise, where the first people were created, not only Lucifer incarnated in the celibate scientists, but also the incarnated Jesus was. In that material life he was the Burkad scientist. We do not know what happened there in details, whether the incarnated Jesus was on earth when the Selbit scientist tempted the people or he flew back to Burkad, which could have happened. One thing is clear: Jesus incarnated into the Burkad scientist was involved in the process of hybrids creation who became our ancestors. The IU representatives think that was the reason of all his further actions on earth and why he sacrificed himself for the sake of people, and I mean not crucifixion here. After the expulsion of people from the territory of the base-paradise, Jesus decided to help them not only as a wise extraterrestrial creator but also incarnate in a proper moment in a human body, as this way was the best to help people in their spiritual development. However, the level of energy, vibrations, of this spiritual person was so high that none of the nations or cultures of the rapidly developing humankind could not provide energy conditions necessary for his incarnation. That is why while he was in the spirit world between lives in physical world, Jesus developed a grand plan. It should be noted that on his spiritual level a complete merging with God takes place when the spirit does not separate itself from God. So this plan can be regarded as divine. According to this plan, it was necessary to form a specific nation which would have culture, religious beliefs, and knowledge, and therefore collective energy, which would make it possible to realize his physical incarnation. It meant to be the Jewish people. All further miracles described in the Old Testament, that is Torah, took place with his direct involvement or under his direction. It was he, incarnated into the Almighty representative of the planet Tumisaut, Yahweh, who manifested himself before Moses. But taking into consideration this contactee's worldview, effect of the famous burning bush was produced. That is, he was the same God Yahweh. And it was he who took out the Jewish people out of Egypt. All the so-called plagues of Egypt, the Red Sea parting and other miracles from the Old Testament were done with the help of extraterrestrial technologies that allowed to master the elements, flora, and fauna. If one takes into consideration that the age of the civilizations, which created us, is more than ours, then it's understandable, though still amazing in the same way as the power of weapon described in this article before. Egyptian priests could do nothing with this weapon because they were protected by the so-called plasmoid civilizations, nature spirits, that were on the highest vibrational levels, just like Yahweh, Jesus. So now it is clear who and for what reason provided Moses, the contactee chosen according to his vibrations, the tablets with the laws, there was a real extraterrestrial spaceship above the Mount Sinai encircled into a plasma cloud, as some esoteric investigators think. What was manna from heaven? A well-balanced nutritional mixture of artificial origin that was sprayed over the Jewish camping by spaceships at night. What was the Ark of the Covenant? A high-frequency generator that served for different purposes and made by Jews according to the technologies given to Moses. And so on. I would like to add that it is not the attempt to explain the divine miracles by technologies using. For all of us, not speaking about the ancient nations, these are really miracles, divine miracles, because they were made by our God's creators to save and develop us. It was a divine will and probably spiritual light creatures, angels, who partially or completely materialized their subtle bodies. So all the story of the Jewish people starting from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was the story of creation of ethnical egregore destined to provide a physical incarnation on earth of the highest spiritual being, the first Son of the Almighty, whom we know under the name Joshua or Jesus. It is no wonder, dear readers, that the stated provokes rejection of Christianity adherents and strong materialists, though by completely different reasons. The first group defends dogmas they got used to, that is why they declare the new information a heresy. The second group is not satisfied with the explanation of our history that connected with spirituality and spiritual persons, no matter how convincing they are. So for atheists this a fiction dedicated, vice versa, to the promotion of the dying Christianity. There should be a smiley face here. My personal conclusion is that the truth is never good for radicals from opposite sides, but according to completely different reasons. This is one of litmus tests of the truth, especially the truth. So what was next according to the Jesus plan, and what was his true sacrifice? After a proper cultural and energy egregore was ready, Jesus was born by the woman that we know as the Virgin Mary or Mother of God about the time stated in the Gospel. The conception was really immaculate, but it was not a dove that participated in it. A dove is only image. Mary agreed to be taken to Burkhardt's spaceship. And there the process called now in vitro fertilization was done. It was done with the genetic material taken from the Burkhard representative, the spirit of whom came from very high spiritual level. Jesus' students, i.e. future apostles, quite correctly described the events of his life. He really traveled to different countries including India and the territory of current Russia, and learned at wise men and probably taught them as well. However, he did it not via caravans but by the extraterrestrial spaceship of his birth farther from Burkad, and it means that his displacement was very fast. Unlike us, he remembered everything after incarnation, which means that he did not lose the connection with the heavenly farther. The meaning of his life was to bring a new teaching, or more precisely, to update the teaching that he himself had provided before to Moses on the Mount Sinai, when he was incarnated in the Tumisout inhabitant, Yahweh. This update was necessary because the purpose of the spiritual teaching provided before was achieved. Among enemy environment, the Jewish nation was formed that knew the higher truths and thus was capable to bring the awaited Messiah. The Messiah who brought the knowledge higher than just the rule an eye for an eye that was necessary before for creation of a separate and different on energy level national egregore. I suppose this is time to take a step back from the earth life of Jesus and answer the question why there is so much cruelty, punishment, death, and so on in the Old Testament. God there always prohibits, frightens, and punishes. And where is love stated in the New Testament? The fact is that all the history of Jewish people when Torah was provided, took place after the terrible war with Selbit, which was imprinted in people's genes. Evidently that after this bloody war that destroyed most part of humanity, the Selbit genes were activated in our ancestors. And these genes are responsible for struggle for survival at any price, distrust to our creators who allowed the war of gods, the above-mentioned fear, and disobedience to those gods or God. Besides, it's important to understand that during the Age of Light, Satya Yuga in Sanskrit, there were no genes in our genetic structure that were responsible for digestion of animal products, meat, fish, and so on. On the one hand, it was because there were no such genes in our main gene providers, Burkad representatives and Earth primates. On the other hand, there was no necessity in animal protein on such a flourishing paradise planet which Earth had been in those times. That is why before the war 12,000 years ago we were complete vegetarians, was Indian Vedas say. However, after Earth was put to the orbit more distant from the Sun, which resulted in energy change and more cold seasons, plant food was not necessary for people surviving. That is why our creators changed our gene structure by adding 5% of genes of Tumisuts who consume animal protein. Accordingly, the gene part of highly spiritual representatives of Burkad became less. But thanks to this we got digestive enzymes which made us omnivorous. And because of this change, and also because of energy and climatic changes on the planet, people's height decreased from 3 to 4 meters, as it was before war, to 1,5-2 meters, after quite a short period after this 130-year war. Veda teachings about vegetarianism that was provided to rishis, ancient Indian wise men who were channelers with plasmoid civilizations, before war could not take into consideration the after-war situation, just because the war happened much later. Such explanation gives a clear understanding of the situation about disputes between vegetarians and meat eaters. The truth is somewhere in between. Besides, according to the received information, animal spirits are different from sentient spirits like ours. They are not immortal, though they can reincarnate in animals again and do it a limited number of times. But the most important is another point. Animal spirits were created and still are being created by plasmoids, i.e. intelligent subtle beings, the civilizations of which provided the Vedan knowledge. They have a specific worldview on the material world and physical incarnations which they consider a mistaken disconnection from God, unlike the IU civilizations that regard the incarnation in physical bodies as the most important way for the universe perception and as a unique possibility for spirit's development. Plasmoids treat the spirits created by them as their children, and of course they persuaded and continue persuading the earth channelers not to touch animals, not to eat them, and so on. It is quite understandable, as now we see that there is a specific reason that is not always connected with vibration reducing due to meat eating. As to the prohibition in Torah and Quran of pork eating, it has practical meaning. Pigs are bearers of a severe parasitic disease, trichinosis, caused by small roundworms, trichinellas. They can be destroyed only by heat treatment, boiling, of meat during many hours. Neither ancient Jews, nor the Arabs much later have not been able to do it in their living conditions. That is why pork was strictly prohibited in order to prevent contamination. Too often usage of meat products, however, can really do harm on many levels. That is why in Christianity and Islam there is a system of fasting periods specific for these nations and cultures. Besides, in Judaism and Islam there are rituals that clean the food itself, especially meat one, from different negative energy, kosher and halal. As I understand, in order to separate the new teaching from pagan traditions provided by plasmoids and connected with animal worshipping, it was not for nothing that the Jews made a golden calf and worshipped it in Moses' absence, making him crash the tablets. Animal sacrifice for the God Yahweh was created. At the same time, killing of living beings connected with meat eating does make consciousness rough. This is one more reason explaining a stiffer approach in the spiritual teachings provided in those times, as well as severe consequences of disobedience. And the last point. Exactly after the war, because of the fact that spiritual vibrations of people reduced, microorganisms that have been responsible before for recycling of dead biomass, decomposing into elements, mutated and initiated colonies of pathogens, bacteria and viruses. And according to the principle like attracts like, additional instruments originated. To summarize all the above said, it becomes clear why in after flood times, after the war and cataclysms, there was a need in such a severe teaching that provided high truths in the form not pleasant for us now. It was impossible to form the egregore of Jewish people, destined to accept Jesus, in other, more humanistic, way. That was the spiritual teaching actual for the period when the knowledge had been lost, the period of light loss. Kali Yuga started when Krishna came, approximately 5,000 years later according to Bhagavad Gita. According to the information from the IU, Krishna was incarnation of the spirit that is the coordinator of our galaxy, the spirit from a very high spiritual level, and that is why he was perceived as the supreme God, as Bhagavad Gita states. And 3,000 years later after this, in times of Jesus, a lot knowledge became irrelevant and demanded at least update. Now let us speak about antagonism from Jewish wise men and most of the lords, i.e. Jesus actually, chosen people to Jesus Christ. Together with great potential, as it always happens, this nation had, and still has, a high responsibility before humankind which any exclusivity involves. As we know, Jews in the end could not believe in divinity of Jesus in spite of his wisdom from the very young age, the wisdom that even Jewish wise men, scholar and Pharisees called so in the New Testament because of their devotion to the old knowledge, were unable to deny. Jesus did not hide the way of his soul and his mission, directly telling that he was the same God Yahweh, especially that Jews knew about reincarnation that is called Gilgal in Judaism. But most of Jews did not believe that there was a Messiah in front of them because they waited different things from their Savior, not the call for love even in response to the evil, but a rebellion and coming out of Roman slavery and restoration of the destroyed Temple of Jerusalem. It was found out the betrayal of Judas Iscariot was connected with those expectations. Judas did suggest showing where his teacher was to Romans and got his 30 pieces of silver. However, he had a clear motive and did not want Jesus' death. Judas sincerely hoped that the teacher, who worked miracles many times, would bring justice and get rid of the hated pagan Roman domination. But it had not been happened for a long time. And Judas decided to take extreme actions. He was sure that under threat of terrible tortures and death his beloved teacher would have to show all his power finally instead of preaching about turning the other cheek. When it did not happen, Judas could not understand that the teacher and his teaching were a whole. And that is why Jesus could not break not a single commandment provided by him. Unlike his teacher, Judas broke the commandment. And not by the fact that he betrayed Jesus, but because instead of deepest regret about his deed, he was able only to return the money and commit a suicide, and, mostly by this act and not by betrayal of Jesus, sending his soul to the lowest levels of the spirit world. Of course, Jesus himself and his support team from Burkad could easily prevent his terrible torment and crucifixion. But nobody could go against the divine plan in making of which he himself had taken part. The complete meaning of this martyr's death is beyond this article, so I will just say that it was the Burke haters who sent watching guards asleep and took Jesus' body to their spaceship. And then the main event in this story happened, and not only this story actually. In the period between his physical death and visiting the future apostles while he was in the spirit world, Jesus made the choice, which is actually the ultimate sacrifice. Though actually it was out of time because it took place in the spirit world where there is no time. By having divine possibilities, Jesus completely deleted from his DNA the information about physical death. That led to the fact that his body completely recovered in material world and also became the seat of his soul, i.e. there was a real resurrection from the dead. But this process is completely irreversible, so Jesus can never die physically a natural death, because of old age or illness. By never I mean the manifested part of the creation cycle which lasts, as we know, many billion years. By this act Jesus deprived himself of possibility of being in the spirit world and also of physical incarnation in eternal worlds of the universe where conditions are much better than in our reality. In fact, he fastened himself to our material world. But why he did it? It appears that only by having a physical body in the material world he can keep the necessary connection with his spiritual egregore, Christianity, so that during communion he can connect himself with every true believer. And not only connect on energy level but also to take and dissolve the negative energy of this believer, i.e. everything we call sins. This is how Jesus is purifying our world and bringing it to the light. It has nothing to do with the Christianity popularization and religiosity. This is a clear energy technique. However, it works only if a believer takes in the Jesus teaching and his personality heartily and not technically. Through every person who takes communion, Jesus raises the vibrations of the whole humankind and prepares it to the planned event that will be described in the last chapter of this article. And when Jesus connects himself with negative energy of each person who takes communion, he feels spiritual and energetic discomfort that we could call in our world suffering. This is what meant when they say in Christianity that we continue doing crucifixion to Jesus with our sins. As we were told via Irina, his spiritual mentors from the highest spiritual levels that could be ever imagined tried to persuade Jesus not to sacrifice himself in that way. His mentors told him they have already nailed you to the cross and they will continue doing it with their sins constantly. But Jesus made his choice to sacrifice himself for the sake of us. We were also told that most galaxy creatures did not understand why he had done exactly for the sake of our planet. One of the explanations is that he was one of our creators and that is why he considers us as his children. The other more meaningful explanation is that he has a peculiar plan for humankind. I will tell about this plan also at the end of the article. Now Jesus in his physical body is on the planet Burkad, the capital of the IU, i.e. in the homeland of his birth father. We cannot even imagine the level of his vibrations and body abilities. A special artificial island of approximately 20 square kilometers, surrounded by a huge body of water, was built for Jesus. This is where Jesus meets with his chosen students from different parts of the universe. He also stays in a permanent contact with our Creator and the spiritual egregore that he had created on earth, supporting and guiding it. His voluntary isolation is necessary because even the highest vibrations of the Burkad inhabitants do not fit the spiritual level of Jesus, and if he stayed among them he would feel constant discomfort while dissolving, or burning, if you like, their negative vibrations. In order to leave his physical body, Jesus would have to be killed or commit a suicide, but the last would bring to falling to the lowest vibrations in the spirit world. But even if some creature in the universe would dare to kill him, though it cannot be even imagined, that could happen only upon his agreement, taking into consideration his divine abilities. So that it would also be a suicide which Jesus would never admit. Let me say some words about the temptation of Jesus by Lucifer in desert. When we asked this question, we were told that this temptation took place in astral world. If Jesus made a bow to Lucifer, who tempted him by the power to control the world in exchange for refusal from Jesus' plan, then it would be the separation from the Almighty Creator which Lucifer had done himself earlier. Then Jesus would become exactly the same as Lucifer, the original Son of God, and would get the power to control even Lucifer, in fact taking his place. But instead of this tempting power, Jesus preferred physical sufferings and death, and then eternal sacrificing himself for the sake of us, which was described above. And in conclusion of this article part, let me say some words about other spiritual traditions. We already found out the origin of Hinduism and Judaism. Now some words about Islam and Buddhism. Prophet Muhammad was a physical contactee with the planet Tumasaut, as well as Moses. The knowledge that was provided to him was intended to form a single national and spiritual egregore from independent Arab tribes fighting with each other. Everybody who has time and desire can have a look at Wikipedia, not speaking about Quran, and make sure that this knowledge is based on the same Bible truths, not too different from those provided before, only adapted and updated in accordance with the new times, i.e. some centuries later after Christ's birth, and historical and geographical situation in the Arab world. People of the Muslim faith worship the Kaaba, a sacred building with the sacred stone inside it, which was reconstructed after the flood. The same father of the Jewish people, Abraham. At the same time, they recognize the existence of the Virgin Mary, Miriam, as mother of Jesus, and Jesus himself as one of the greatest prophets, Isa. But Muhammad made some creative corrections in the teaching that has been provided to him, and some of them were used by religious Islam fanatics for their own goals. But I would prefer not to develop this topic here. Prophet Muhammad really had a night travel to Jerusalem, Miraj, as it is stated in Quranic verses of the Surah An-Najm. In Jerusalem he really met with Abraham, Moses, Musa, and Jesus, Isa. It was astral traveling in the astral world without physical body relocation. At the moment Muhammad is incarnated on one of the planets out of our galaxy. However, he still supports the Earth egregore created by him. As the creators of spiritual egregores, Muhammad and Jesus contact each other. The Buddha was the incarnation of the spiritual personality, soul, from one of the highest spiritual levels. Buddhism showed and continues showing the view on divinity, peculiar for plasmoid civilizations that are inclined for non-personalized perception of the Creator, which is also part of the truth. Now Buddha is in the spirit world from where he also supports his egregore. The purpose of the extraterrestrial humanoids, why they contact us and provide with the information. The main aim of our creators is to lift the human consciousness to the level that will let our civilization to join the interstellar union. In order to do it, a number of conditions should be fulfilled. The end of all war conflicts on Earth and no war actions during at least 5 Earth years. Refusing of death penalty because it harms the participants if the situation on the spiritual level and in fact is only a revenge without understanding that the whole society is responsible for every criminal act. Refusing of abortion, first of all because it does not take into consideration the plan of souls that come here for incarnation and that probably have been waiting their turn for incarnation for a long time. Respect and careful treatment of our planet and all connected with this. Gradual recovery of disharmony that we already allowed. A complete respect to opinions of all people, freedom of speech and opinions. Will of the majority of legally competent population of the planet, not less 70%, expressed in the general suffrage. These conditions are the main. We are waited for in the interstellar union, as partners and companion of the same rights in order to investigate then our amazing and eternally diverse universe where we live together with our extraterrestrial friends and creators. The universe consisting of dense material, astral and spiritual worlds where sentient spirits can get experience and develop up to the highest levels. This refers to the souls of Earthmen and of those from other planets, especially that all of us can incarnate on different planet of dense material world and also in bodies of subtle plasmoids. In this sense we are the same. That is, in the following life any of us can incarnate on a quite distant from Earth planet, and vice versa. The Earth people were created by extraterrestrial civilizations, Tumasaut, Burkad, and Selbit, as hybrids aimed to combine the best traits of these planets' representatives. And now our ancient parents who provided us with the main spiritual teachings are ready to accept us into the bosom of the star family. After that we will be able to get all the accumulated by them knowledge, technologies, experience of health treatment, rejuvenation, and many others. Joining of the IU, that includes 117 out of 727 civilizations in our galaxy, supposes a full mass contact with us, and the possibility of free visits of these planets. However, it all cannot be revealed to us until the spiritual level of our civilization is so low that most of these knowledge would be probably used not for creation but for war and aggressive destruction. The vivid evidence of such approach are regular aggressive actions of different countries that caused crashes of unprotected, usually tourist, extraterrestrial spaceships, and also death and capturing of innocent pilots and passengers. We know the exact dates of such accidents, details, and approximate location of secret bases where the crashed extraterrestrial spaceships were delivered. According to the information we received, governments of advanced countries are informed about the existence of the IU. Even more, some political leaders and the representatives of the IU concluded a secret agreement where it is stated that nuclear weapon is forbidden for use on the planet. As it would have no result, the aliens insisted that they would destroy all military rockets with nuclear charge. We were told that such cases had already taken place. At the same time, our creators do their best not to deprive us from freedom of choice, freedom to choose the way to develop. This reason and also physical security of contactees who would be immediately controlled by humane secretive agencies are the main reasons why there are no public evidence of contacts. Even if there were some evidence, they would be declared as false on official level. And if the evidence was mass, because of our collective consciousness, level, that would cause not uniting of society but vice versa separation and attempts to use the contact with aliens for own purposes including war ones. And the confrontation to such usage would cause mutual violence, i.e. blockbusters coming to life where extraterrestrials are presented as aggressive and evil. In other words, they will not make us happy by forced mass contact. Instead of this, over the course of our history, they support us via contactees providing us with the knowledge of the IU. Among those, quite conscious, contactees you may found famous people, for example, the family of Roerich, Helena Blavatsky, Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, Wolf Messing, Baba Vanga and many others. Earth joining to the IU, as it was found out, is the purpose of Jesus. As we remember, he in his physical body is on the planet Burkad now, the capital of the IU. When the conditions stated above, which are actually the commandments of the New Testament, are fulfilled and Earth joins the IU, Jesus would come to Earth in his physical body. It will be the so-called second coming as the celebration of our achievements. And then key moment in Jesus' plan has to happen. He thinks that people would ask him to be the ruler of our planet. Then the age of love and light will come again, similar to the age before the war 12,000 years ago, on the other spiral turn of our development. So there is no an assembled puzzle of information, the explanation of spiritual and religious truths, historical aspects, and the extraterrestrial support of Earth by our creators from the IU. And the last thing I would like to add in this article. We already know that besides the IU there are other associations of civilizations in our galaxy. Their participants do not always agree with the ideas of the IU, however there is no open confrontation between these civilizations' associations. One of the famous associations is known to us, the Galactic Federation, based on the Pleiades constellation. It consists of 17 physical civilizations and about 700 subtle, plasmoid, civilizations. And 3 physical civilizations out of these 17 are participants of the IU as well, which does not contradict the rules of both these associations. The Galactic Federation is often called by Earth channelers as the Federation of Light because a lot of high vibrational plasmoid civilizations are its members. Some members of the Galactic Federation have aggressive view on the change of the situation on Earth. They are ready to interfere and sort out the mess in society and on the planet. However, they cannot and will not do it without the permission of the IU, where the civilizations that create our ancestors belong. The IU provides security of our civilization first all from the attempts of unauthorized actions from the representatives of different planets that break the laws of the IU. Actually, they are criminals or pirates. There is a special department of the Galactic Security Service, which takes care of our planet. Besides, thanks to many IU bases, including war ones, located on Earth and underneath the Moon, the system was created capable to fight off the attack of our planet from cosmos as it was with Selbit before. So, dear friends, everything depends on us, including you, dear reader. Thank you for reading this article. Article prepared by Vladimir Goldstein. Equals 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 equals. The above information was given via the contactee Irina Podzarova, Voronezh, mostly by the following representatives of the Interstellar Union: Midgoskos, humanoid, biologist, psychologist, specialist of alien life forms. The planet Esler, Huntsman constellation, 36 light-years from the Sun. Rayom Tyan, humanoid, a specialist of the history of the connections with young cosmic civilizations. The planet Burkhad, Cygnus constellation, 670 light-years from the Sun. Te Percredures, reptilian, biologist, ecologist, transformer of genetic reptilian information into the cells of humanoid races. The planet Selbit, Canes Venatici constellation, 730 light-years from the Sun. The author is personally grateful for the gained invaluable knowledge to Midgaskaz, Rayamtayan, Te Percredures, and also Kir Khitan, the planet Daral, Saint Germain, the planet Diseru, Marakunt, the planet Burkhad, Lishani, the planet Chimeri, Olmerums, the planet Futissa that does not take part in the IU, and other extraterrestrials that are not in this list.